journalists like Arnab Goswami or Rahul Shivshankar, also known as RSS, or Anjana Om Kashyap, or a gentleman who was privileged to spend a few weeks behind bars, I mean Sudhir Chaudhary, and there are several others, Navika Kumar. Those who are in positions of power are vengeful. So it's not just intolerance. You're not with me, you're against me. You're not with me, you're an enemy of the nation. Narendra Modi. Now, he happens to be the first and the only Prime Minister of India who's never held an unscripted, spontaneous media conference, press conference where journalists can ask him any question. Islamophobia in India has peaked at a level where it wasn't since, say, the 1940s. Thank you, media. You've done this. Over 300 personal electronic devices, laptops, cellular phones, pen drives, hard drives remain with the custody of the Delhi police. Arnab Goswami used to be a journalist once upon a time. Now he's a monstrous caricature of a journalist. Hindi mein Bivvatsya Rakshas.
We're in conversation with Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, who's a writer, who's a journalist, amongst many other things. But today's conversation is going to be focused on the relationship between government and media, what it should be, what it is like, and what happens if you don't toe the line. And who better to speak about this than you? Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Pooja, for asking me to be here with you. And I thank all the viewers of News Minute.
Thank you. I want to start off with a quick look at the spectrum of media today. We have only two options, so to speak. Either you toe the line of the government, or invariably you become an adversary. For you, what is the delicate relationship between the government and the media?
There are many dimensions to that question you've asked. Because there is the media and there is the media. There is the so-called mainstream media, which is supposed to be newspapers, radio, television. And there is the so-called new media and the social media. So each of these segments, the medium, the word media is a plural form of media, has its own unique features. But since you've asked a question which is not specific to any or all the media, let's be very straight. And this is not unique to India. This is true for much of the world.
Yeah.
If you are an adversary of the government, or if you are perceived to be an adversary of those who are in positions of power and authority, they need not be government, it need not be politicians or civil servants. It could be corporate captains, it could be the military top brass, it could even be mafia bosses. Then you are perceived to be not just a critic but an adversary. So in your job, in what you believe is your job in a democracy, to hold truth to power, to hold accountable those who are in positions of power and authority, and ask them difficult questions, then you are perceived to be an adversary. What's the difference? And this is specific to India. What is the difference that has taken place in the recent past, specifically the last 9 years and a little longer that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been in power? I mean, specifically from around the middle of 2014.
15, yeah.
In the past, journalists who ask difficult questions, journalists who investigate abuse of power and authority, journalists who try to hold accountable or those in positions of power, journalists who try to ensure there was greater transparency in public life, those in power were never particularly tolerant of such people. They were often downright intolerant. There were degrees of intolerance even. So what's different? The difference is those who are in positions of power are vengeful. So it's not just intolerance. You're not with me, you're against me. You're not with me, you're an enemy of the nation. You're not with me, I will misuse law enforcing agencies like the Enforcement Directorate, like the like the Income Tax Department, like the Central Bureau of Investigation. We'll we will make your life miserable, not just by misusing laws on defamation and libel, but draconian laws like the UAPA or the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So you would be targeted because you believe you're trying to do your job. Now, why has this happened? Several reasons, but let me point out a few important reasons. The dependence of the so-called mainstream media on financial support from the government in the form of advertising, sponsorship, has grown relatively. It's not that it wasn't there in the past. So advertising-driven media had to be beholden to the large corporates, the owners of the fast-moving consumer goods that advertise. But now, the role of the government, in particular the union government, the government of India, and central government undertakings, and also to an extent, state governments. So here, it's the Karnataka government. That is a reason why a large section of the so-called mainstream media has become so abjectly subservient to those who are in positions of power and authority. Just second part to your question, and I'll just take a few minutes, and that is the second reason why we see this having happened is because this culture of subservience has spread right from the top, namely the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. Now, he happens to be the first and the only Prime Minister of India who's never held an unscripted, spontaneous media conference, press conference where journalists can ask him any question. How he answers, what he answers, that's another story. But he's the first and only Prime Minister. You know what happened when Karan Thapa asked him questions about the 2002 Gujarat riots. What he also does, he picks and chooses specific journalists who are either ideologically committed to him. For instance, Rajat Sharma, who was, as a student, he was a member of the Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, which is the students' wing of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. Or you have journalists like Arnab Goswami, or Rahul Shivshankar, also known as RSS, or Anjana Om Kashyap, or a gentleman who was privileged to spend a few weeks behind bars, I mean Sudhir Chaudhary, and there are several others, Navika Kumar. I mean, I don't want them to feel a little left out, or Deepak Chaurasia, and I'm sure I'm missing out on a couple. So when Mr. Modi grants interviews to them, I forgot Sudarshan News, that guy, he's like...
We're still calling them news?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The editor of Sudarshan TV, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so the point is, they not only ask goody questions, I mean the kind of questions that the Prime Minister would like to be asked. They also do not cross-question him. They do not ask him questions or follow-up questions, so to say. So then what happens is, the culture of subservience gets deepened. So you get an impression, hello, look, Mr. Modi is giving an interview to Anjana Om Kashyap, or Sudhir Chaudhary, or Deepak Chaurasia, or Rajat Sharma, or Arnab Goswami. And, they ask him, what are you going to do about jobs? And so he says, the official statistics don't count all the people who are sort of frying pakoras, they are self-employed. Last point, Mr. Modi has not only given interviews to journalists of his choice and not conducted a spontaneous press conference or media conference for everybody. He also has given interviews to people he wants to be interviewed by. Example, Prasoon Joshi.
Yeah.
Example,
Akshay
Akshay Kumar. And that famous question of his, my God, I mean,
Hum
how
kaise
can I forget it? You know, his driver wanted him to ask this question to the Prime Minister of India. हम कैसे खाते हैं बोलिए ना, काट के खाते हैं, चूस के खाते हैं. So this would be, I mean, in brief, the reason why you see much of the media what it is. And those who take the job seriously, including you, including News Minute, you know what happens. Yes, you are not only accused of being anti-national, Deshadrohi, part of the Tukde gang, etc.
Amongst other things.
Amongst other things. You're not just seen to be an enemy of the nation, the wrath of the state, the might of the state can descend on you.
So every time a BJP leader is asked why the Prime Minister does not address a press conference, one very often thing we hear is they say, why should he address a press conference? There are ministers who address press conferences which relate to their ministries. The Prime Minister does not have to address a press conference. I want you to tell our viewers, if they're still not sure, why it is important for him to face an independent media. What it means.
It's very easy to put out this kind of an excuse, I would say, for not answering difficult questions from journalists. Look at what happened in May 2019. Mr. Narendra Modi was re-elected with a bigger majority, with a higher vote share. NDA becomes stronger than in 2014. At the headquarters of the Bharatiya Janata Party in Delhi, there are literally, I don't know how many hundreds of journalists, and not just journalists, cheerleaders. And there is Mr. Modi sitting there, and sitting next to him is Shri Amit Shah, the Home Minister of India. And questions are asked. And Mr. Amit Shah answers those questions. Now, what message is he trying to send? That I am above you guys. Questions? Somebody else will answer on my behalf.
So there's no accountability, is what you're saying. He thinks he's not accountable to the press and by extension to the people. Is that a fair assessment?
Maybe you should ask him if you get an opportunity to ask him.
We both know that's not going to happen.
All right, you both know that happening. No, actually, it's more than that. It's not just, I don't give a damn about you. I have succeeded in throttling, silencing, intimidating, harassing those critical voices. That will never be said. But that is exactly what the government in power, the ruling regime, has wanted and has been successful. Let's accept that fact. And the agenda of the ruling regime, which is a right-wing Hindu nationalist regime, is where it is today, thanks to the media. So if Islamophobia in India has peaked at a level where it wasn't since, say, the 1940s, thank you, media, you've done this. If in the eyes of some, you are, Hindu Rashtra is here and now, you haven't had to change the constitution of India. So what if there are words like socialism, secularism, fraternity in the preamble, but you're close to that, your goal is there. I mean, it's happened.
You don't need to change the constitution anyway.
It has even happened even before the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh turns 100, which is in 2025. So when you have reached that kind of a level, you show your disdain for the media. And it's not just the mainstream media. Look at the social media. And to use the incredible spread of misinformation and disinformation, the use and abuse of WhatsApp. I mean, every case of mob lynching in this country, in the recent past behind it, you'll find at least a WhatsApp message. The Bharatiya Janata Party has overtaken everybody, they are miles and miles ahead in misusing the social media for political propaganda.
Right. I want to come, since you mentioned these two powerful corporates. There's another corporate who's in India, all powerful, almost as powerful as the Prime Minister. And you took on that corporate and paid a price. You were the only journalist to be named in the Hindenburg report. But tell us, what is the cost of taking on Adani in India today, or even criticizing Adani?
Yeah, what you said is taking on.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing my job.
Yeah.
Right? I thought. I never realized I would become, as we talk, the only citizen of India against whom lawyers engaged by corporate entities headed by Shri Gautam Adani, who happens to be the richest man in India at present, if you look at his market capitalization, who at one stage was the second richest man in the world before Hindenburg research happened, be that as it may. The fact is, I wrote what I think is factually correct. His opinion and my opinion may be different, but I dare him to point out a factual error in what I have written and others with me have written, okay, including the article that was published in June 2017, republished by The Wire, with a title that Modi government's 500 crore bonanza to the Adani group. And I thought 500 crore was small change for one of the world's richest men and India's richest men. But no, even that article, it was pulled down from the Economic and Political Weekly when I was its editor. Behind my decision to resign as editor of the Economic and Political Weekly in July 2017 was this particular article, which I'll urge your readers to read and arrive at their own conclusion. What I could never have imagined were several things that followed. That there would be literally hundreds of people, including 2 Nobel laureates, including Amartya Sen, Angus Deaton, an eminent media scholar, Professor Noam Chomsky, who came out in my support, among hundreds of others. Okay, I appeared in court, and then something very unusual happened in January 2021. A non-bailable warrant of arrest was issued against me for not appearing in court.
Right.
I was told the Supreme Court guidelines said that if you don't appear in court when you're asked to appear, a bailable warrant of arrest can be issued against you. And if you still don't appear, a non-bailable warrant.
Right.
But in my case, and all this was happening in the middle of the 2 waves of COVID, where much of the court activities were curtailed or online. Be that as it may, I did appear, all right? I appeared thrice before that court. And for reasons that are best known to the Adani group and the lawyers representing them, they haven't taken that case forward. And something that just your readers may find interesting is that it took a huge toll on my family. Because it's a non-bailable warrant, and because the Gujarat High Court took 7 or 10 days before they said there's a stay on the execution of this non-bailable warrant, my lawyer advised me not to stay at home. He said, non-bailable warrant, the cops can come and put handcuffs on you and can be taken away. So I was almost as if I was a fugitive from the law. And so I stayed with a friend who I shall not name, but essentially it had a huge impact. My wife, our children, I can't say it had no impact on them. So this is what is called the chilling effect. So you try and intimidate not me, but everybody else.
And your support system too? Your colleagues, your family?
Now look at it this way. I appeared in court last in March 2021, right? How long has it been?
almost 3 years now.
Why haven't they started the trial?
Yeah.
I mean, of the 6 defamation cases that have been instituted against me and others,
All by the Adani group.
by the Adani group, there are 5 which are pending in different courts of law in Gujarat and 1 in Rajasthan. There's a little story behind each of them, but in the interest of time, I'll stop.
Which brings me to your next run-in with agencies. Last year in October, you were picked up for questioning from your house early morning.
No, they visited my home. They didn't pick me up.
Okay.
Or they,
This was with relation to the
Newsclick
issue.
episode.
What were the questions they asked you?
What were the questions they asked me?
Because these questions, I tell you why I want to know. There is so much of secrecy, there is so much of mystery around these. And you know, all the news channels run it again and again, your name, your photo, and the fact that you're being questioned. What really happens behind screen?
The set of questions that were asked of me were asked of 80 other people.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little bit of a background. For the first time in the history of India, over 300 police personnel, men and women, assembled in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning on the 3rd of October, and in the morning they fanned out to 80 different locations in the national capital region, including my home. I live in the outskirts of Delhi. I live in Gurgaon, which is in the state of Haryana. And all of them was coordinated at 6:30 in the morning. You know, during the emergency, you heard about the midnight knock.
Yeah.
This is the early morning alarm. So they came, and much later did I realize that the same set of questions were being asked. Did you cover the Hindu-Muslim communal riots in northeast Delhi in early 2020? I said, no. I said, did you cover the farmers' agitation which took place for a year, all the way till the end of 2021? I said, yes. Then they said, did you write about this, the way the government was handling the pandemic, the COVID pandemic? I said, no. And then when I went, you see what happened is they were at my home, 10 police personnel, nine police personnel. I went with them voluntarily. They didn't pick me up voluntarily to the office of the special cell.
Right.
And I spent about 12 hours with them.
Okay.
And about 8 different police personnel asked me the same set of questions. Some asked me additional questions. Do you use Signal? I said, yes. Who is this person in Hong Kong who you spoke with you? You know, they were trying to establish that China connection for which they've accused the founder, Prabir Purakayastha, of
taking money from China to
China.
defame India.
I mean, that's another story I can tell you about that. But here is the 75-year-old person who's been in police custody and judicial custody continuously from the 3rd of October. And as we talk, and honestly, I don't know how long he's going to be there. The Income Tax Department has frozen the accounts of Newsclick, depriving at least 45 people who were employed out of their job, 15 others, including me. We were consultants with them. Let's go back to that. So they asked me, who's this person in Hong Kong? I said, he's authored a book. And I interviewed him. He's based in Hong Kong. I spoke with him in order to, fix the time where the logistical details where I could interview him. And you can see that interview. It's online. Then he said, who is this person in Australia? I raise invoices and then it comes to my bank account. I've been a consultant with Newsclick continuously from March 2018 and I remain one. Then there was a funny question they asked me, which I didn't know whether I should laugh or I should cry. Who is S. Bhatnagar in the US? I said, he's my brother-in-law. He's my wife's younger brother. Then they stopped asking me questions. Chai piyenge, coffee piyenge, what would you like to eat? Chola with aloo, bhatura, pani piyenge. That's how it happened. I was among only 2 out of that 80 people whose phone was returned that same day. Remember, as we talk, from the 3rd of October, over 300 personal electronic devices, laptops, cellular phones, pen drives, hard drives, remain with the custody of the Delhi police. Even as the government is trying to frame laws or has suggested there should be a set of rules and guidelines about when these personal electronic devices can be seized. I mean, this
and
is
for how long and for what reasons?
Yes. Yeah. And they've invoked the UAPA. And that, you know, and I know, is arguably the most draconian of all laws in the Indian statute books, and very, very difficult to get bail.
Yeah.
And we've known what happened to the Bhima Koregaon case. When they were examining my phone, I said, give me the hash value. And the hash value is like a digital fingerprint.
Okay.
So you take it before and then you take it after. So you know if something has been put into your phone. I said, you know, I've sort of learned all this because my phone was forensically examined, and this is going to be the 6th occasion, once by Amnesty International, once by Citizen Lab in Toronto, by the Kolkata police, by a technical committee appointed by the Supreme Court of India. So, and they were very polite. He said, look, we are doing all this in front of you. The top cop has said we should let you give it back to you. You want to go, you know, off. And so I said, okay. I sort of said, okay, give it back to me. I was suffering that withdrawal symptoms. I hadn't used my phone for 12 hours or 11 and a half hours. And then I came out, and you know, as a journalist, you are used to asking questions. And suddenly I was surrounded by few dozen camera persons, journalists. And they asked me questions. And I said, before you ask me questions, so let me give you a little statement. So I made a statement in English. And then I noticed a woman with the Republic TV mic ID. And I said, you're from Republic TV? You want me to speak with you? Okay, roll your camera. And then she asked me, what did they ask you about Newsclick? So I responded. I said, Arnab Goswami used to be a journalist once upon a time. Now he's a monstrous caricature of a journalist. Hindi mein, Bivatsya Rakshas. Then she said, you haven't answered my question. So I said, what's your name? So she said, Simran. So I said, didn't you call me a few days ago and you recorded my conversation and put it on air without my permission? She just kept quiet. Then she said, what did they ask you about Newsclick? So I said, I repeated myself. Once upon a time, Arnab Goswami used to be a journalist, now he's a monstrous caricature. So she realized it was no use.
Did
they never showed it. But, you know, there were about dozens of other comedians, everybody else showed it. Same story happened. I first gave a similar statement in Hindi. Then as I was sort of leaving that area, 2 microphones were thrust into my face. One by ANI, and everybody knows about ANI. And there was another one by PTI, so there was Asian News International and the Press Trust of India. So I told the person in my broken Hindi, don't ask me questions. Sawal mat kijiye. Main jawab de raha hu. I'm giving you the answer. I said, Modi ji mahan hai. Modi ji Bhagwan ka avatar hai. Modi ji is great. Modi ji is God's avatar. And I said, do you have any more questions? And again, ANI, they never put it out. But PTI put it out. And I could never have imagined that they would make memes out of it and suddenly the whole thing would get viral. So I acquired a lot of notoriety.
Somebody who's not a media professional, I use that term very responsibly, media professional, why should they care about freedom of press? It does not concern them directly, but it's still very important. Why do you think that is?
Do you believe in democracy? What is your notion of democracy? Is democracy, your idea of democracy is that the views of 80% of the population should always prevail. That the views of the minority, the 15%, the 14%, Hindus, Muslims, let's be straight, that their views do not deserve consideration, that their views do not have to be respected, then is this a democracy or a dictatorship? Is this truly democracy or an authoritarian democracy, an electoral democracy? So, Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India says the right to free expression is a fundamental right of every citizen.
Yeah.
And a journalist, she or he derives his or her right to free expression from that article. It's a fundamental right. Then there is Article 19(2), which says there are reasonable restrictions of the right to free speech. And we can have a longer discussion on some other occasion. Who decides what is reasonable? That's the problem.
Right.
Is it your local cop? Is it somebody who doesn't like your face? Is it the goon down the road? Is it the Inspector General of Police? Is it a magistrate in a lower court? Is it the Chief Justice of India? You know, the ambiguity is important. So journalism and democracy is too important to be left for journalists alone. I think it concerns every citizen of this country. If you believe that for a democracy to be vibrant, you need institutions which serve as checks and balances. And the media is one of them. It's a separate matter that it's not playing that role.
Yeah.
It's a separate matter that the other constitutional authorities, including the Controller and Auditor General of India, is not playing that role the way at least I would have liked it, or the Election Commission of India. So I believe it's important, if a democracy is to be vibrant, if those in positions of power do not abuse and misuse their authority or their discretionary powers, then you need a vibrant media, and you need a media that asks questions, not the godi media, not a subservient media, but a media that holds truth to power.
On that note, we're going to let you go. Thank you very much for this conversation, and we hope that you continue asking the tough questions of whoever it is,
I
either
hope
the government
so.
or their supporters.
I would be happy if I remained out of jail. There is a saying which a friend of mine and my wife appreciated very much about Bhagat Singh. You know, everybody loves Bhagat Singh. Everybody admires Bhagat Singh, so long as he's not a member of your family.
Quite appropriate. I understand where they're coming from.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Pooja.
so much for speaking to us.
Namaskar. Thank you very much. Thanks to all your viewers.
Thank you.